Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 163 of ReelBlend, a podcast that will unleash hell as soon as you give us the signal or something. My name is Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at CinemaBlend, and on this week's show...
I'm sorry, are you being dismissive of Gladiator?
No, that's a quote from Gladiator.
I know, but you said it in like Gladiator. A pissy way.
Well, I didn't say... No, I didn't. You're reading too much into it. And besides, it's a premium topic, so we'll get to that later on so that people can listen to it on Monday. On this week's show, we have a first look at Marvel's new film, Eternals, including a lot of other announcements from the Marvel Studios folk. Guy Ritchie has a new film called The Wrath of Man, or just Wrath of Man, with Jason Statham. And we'll be talking about that. And then David Oyelowo joins the show. He's directing a new film that he's also co-starring in called The Waterman. So we'll get a chance to run his interview in a bit. But first, let me introduce the guys. Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jakey.
I was just about to say I'm doing well, but you didn't ask. How are you, Sean?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for joining the show, as always, and partnering with myself and Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hi, Kev.
Hi, Sean. Jacob. Gabriel. Good to see you guys.
Did you guys see what this renamed show is?
Jake and his friends or something?
Jake and friends.
Jake and friends.
Yep, because I have to set up the Zoom now, which means I get to title the Zoom. So this show is now called Jake and Friends.
You guys have no idea how insufferable Jake is behind the scenes about things that are related to Jake. There's a lot of things.
Dude, my segment is literally named, it's my
Jake's takes. You've probably seen him also share things that he puts into the teleprompter to make his poor coworkers read.
That's really good.
If they read ahead, it wouldn't be an issue.
Very true. All right, if you're watching us on YouTube to see how handsome Jake is, hello, subscribe, turn on notifications, do all the things you're supposed to do on a YouTube channel. If you are listening to us where you get your audio podcast needs, in the description you will find information on how to subscribe to the ReelBlend Premium episode. And in order to do that, you have to go to bit.ly/ReelBlend Premium. The Gladiator joke makes a lot of sense if you listen to Premium, because you guys will know that we're sort of carving out titles that we have differentiating opinions on, or films that we, over the course of the years doing the show, have, sort of carved out, like, we'd like this or don't like that. And we're going to revisit them for the purpose of the show. And the guys thought that the first one we should do is Gladiator, a movie that I don't necessarily enjoy or haven't up until this point. And so I rewatched it, and we're going to discuss it on the Premium episode, which drops on Monday. So subscribe to Premium. You guys would like it. It's extra ReelBlend time. Weekly poll. Kev, give a vote.
Well, I was just going to say, for our non-premium listeners, I just want to mention that there's a whole bit in our premium episode where Sean O'Connell admits to recording a copy of Gladiator via TNT with commercial breaks, and that was the version of the movie.
Was it TNT or was it the Sci-Fi Channel?
Sci-Fi. It was a Sci-Fi channel.
This is the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah.
And he was going to watch the movie with commercial breaks and fast forward, and that was going to be his experience.
Not just that, the on-screen chyrons, where a character like walks onto the screen and like points at a show that's coming on next.
Yeah. The Meg. Yeah. It's like Jason Statham comes out and dances.
Yeah. Does he react to the tigers in Gladiator? Like, oh no.
This is how Sean was going to watch Gladiator.
And then like shrugs and points at like the big 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock Central.
Yep. Yeah, that was pretty funny. That was a good laugh. All right, the weekly poll. We are transitioning into a new month. This is May, and so we asked the ReelBlend users, which May movie are you most excited to see? I left one off by accident and got called out for it in the comments. Kevin McCarthy.
All the ones to leave off.
Yeah, right? I know. And you know what it is? I looked at Box Office Mojo, and so it looked at the titles that were coming to theaters, so I wasn't paying attention.
But that was coming to theaters.
Left off Army.
But that's why we have I have this conversation with people in the comments all the time. They say, you forgot this one. And I say, no. There was a fourth option. It was called something else. Comment below.
Correct.
You found
Maybe
the comments.
I did it intentionally.
There you go.
This one's probably too easy, but Kev, the options were Spiral, Quiet Place 2, Cruella, or something else.
I mean, considering our listeners, I'm going to go with Quiet Place Part 2. Now, am I far off?
72% said Quiet Place Part 2.
Okay.
Yeah. It dominated.
Had Army of the Dead been on there, I still think Quiet Place would have beaten it.
You think so?
I do.
No, I think the Zack Snyder Army would have taken over and dominated it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm very excited about Army of the Dead. I just think Quiet Place Part 2, I don't know.
Yeah, but I think you're focused too much on the movies themselves. I'm focused on the fact that like the Zack Snyder online army would have found our poll and would have descended upon it, and
this happens.
Yeah,
and we can use this space real fast to plug the fact that we will be having a sit-down interview with John Krasinski coming up on our show that we recorded prior to the pandemic for the original release date. And Gabe said he re-listened to it recently, and it doesn't seem dated. So it's going to be a brand new, fresh interview. So we are going to have Krasinski on our show, which is cool.
I also think, have we discussed this on the show? Like, I think that's the perfect movie to welcome people back to theaters. You know, for people who haven't gone back yet or are sort of trepidatious about it, because the gimmick of Quiet Place and the way that people participated on the first one and did their best to be quiet in the theaters, and it became part of your movie-going experience, like, there's still a huge element of that in the second movie, and I think that that's a perfect type of film across, like, Godzilla Kong and Mortal Kombat. They're fun movies, but they're not the ones that are going to get, like, the 4 quadrants to return.
See, I think Fast is going to be that movie.
You think so?
I really do. And I don't mean that from, you know, I know Gabe doesn't love the Fast franchise, but like, so correct me if I'm wrong, Quiet comes out this month, May, right? And then
Memorial Day weekend, I think the 28th or 29th.
Fast is June.
June.
I just feel like based on where we are right now, I think we're going to be in a better spot in June. Okay. I think just from a perspective of people going to the movies. I mean, Quiet Place, I'm sure will do well, but I think Fast is going to be like that big one. But I could be wrong. I just feel like that's a good, solid PG-13 action film.
Yep.
The Quiet Place films are, you know, they're good. They're pretty brutal and dark. And I actually wonder how the concept of that movie will affect people wanting to see it.
Yeah, that's a little bit true.
But I think that it would be different if it were the first one and like people had to be sold on the concept. I think right now people are sold on the fact that they loved the first one and at this point kind of just want to see where the story goes. I think it would be a different conversation if it were A Quiet Place Part 1. But the fact that it's Part 2, I think the concept's already sold.
Yeah, and we've seen it, and we'll get into it. Obviously, Krasinski, we had a great conversation
about. We've seen it.
Yeah,
I want to see it again.
He shot it on
I do
film.
want to see it again too.
Yeah, and I'll give you a little tease. There's a really great story he tells about the oneer in the film, where Emily Blunt is driving, which is insane, and that's in the trailer if you haven't seen it. So just tease ahead for that coming in a couple weeks. So.
All right, we will talk more Quiet Place as we get closer to the release date. But first, we have a film called The Waterman, which is coming to theaters this week, and its director David Oyelowo, who you know from Selma and several other films. He is stepping into the role of director. He did a short film prior to doing this. This is his first feature film. He tells a really great story about how he got involved in this picture, which several people are describing as Spielbergian, and I'll explain why in the This Week in Movies segment. So without further ado, David Oyelowo joining the ReelBlend podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time. This was a fantastic movie that I thoroughly enjoyed, man. It's you and I are about the same age. I'm the father of 2 boys, and it just transported me back to, you know, those types of adventures that me as a storytelling junkie kid just absorbed left and right. So thank you so much for it.
Oh, well, thank you for recognizing that. And it's funny, isn't it? We loved those films growing up. For some bizarre reason, they're thinner on the ground. And to share them with our family is to have to go back to those films that we watched when we were younger.
Very true. You know, first-time filmmakers, people taking a big swing at feature films, they tend to go with something a little bit smaller, a little bit something more simple so they can learn on the job. You're going after the quest for immortality, mythologies that span decades. I mean, I have to admire you swinging for the fences right out of the gate.
Oh, man. Well, it wasn't by design, I'll tell you that. I wasn't originally going to be directing it. You know, I wanted to see a film like this in the world. I certainly wanted to have someone who looks like me and a kid who looked like I did when I was younger represented in the film. But it was another director who was going to do it. He left the project when we had Lonnie. We had a start date. We had the financing. And it was actually our writer, Emma Nadell, who turned to me and said, I think you're the one to direct this. And the truth of the matter is, when you have all of those elements, you go. You know, movies are so tough to put together, and we couldn't allow it to fall apart. And so I took 2 weeks to think about it, and then I jumped in. But I have to say, considering how much of a fan of Spielberg's I am, the fact that, you know, I've never heard this phrase Spielbergian before. And the fact that it keeps on coming up in relation to this film, I kind of feel a little, I feel a bit weirded out by it, but I'm going to take it because those are exactly the kind of films I loved growing up.
There are far worse things you could be called.
And I have been called them, so I know. So, yeah.
Well, I am curious, though. Well, that's a fascinating story that you had no intention of directing it and that you just stepped in when a gap opened up. But, prior to that, the laundry list of directors that you've been able to observe is, ridiculous. And so I was curious, on those sets, were you a bit of a sponge? Did you pay attention to things they were doing? Like, in the back of your mind, did you think you would ever get to this point where you were going to direct?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons I could even dare go near such an ambitious film. I had literally been under the directorial gaze of Steven Spielberg, admittedly in a very different kind of film. We did Lincoln together, but working with Ava DuVernay and Chris McQuarrie and Will Gluck and Anthony Minghella and Chris Nolan, those are experiences you simply come away from changed. If you are someone who has even a secret ambition of directing one day, and I have been actually very intentional in being on those sets and observing and asking questions and being curious. And so absolutely a huge part of what I was able to bring to The Waterman was gleaned from those directors, but also talking to some of those directors as I was going into directing this, some of them being actors who've also directed films that they're in. I spoke to Nate Parker, who famously did Birth of a Nation, or Joel Edgerton, who did Boy Erased and The Gift. I spoke to Mel Gibson, who did it, I think, better than anyone with Braveheart. And they all had, gems in terms of advice to take me into my own experience.
Wow, that's outstanding to have those resources available to you and to pick their brains.
Yeah.
Before I move off of this, tell me about day one. Did you pick something easy to shoot for day one, knowing that it was going to be this is a significant milestone for you?
Well, you know what? I wish it was that simple when you have a film schedule. The reality is we only had Rosario Dawson for about 12 days before she had to move on to another project. So we had to shoot out all the stuff in the house first. And the stuff in the house is fairly emotional. It's fairly, it's sort of the heart of the movie. It's where the stakes in the movie are very much set in terms of Lonnie's character, Gunnar, realizing his mother is ill, us getting a sense of the depth of what's happening with the family. So, we hit the ground running, shooting some quite emotional stuff. But thankfully, Rosario Dawson, what a transcendent talent, to have at your disposal. And I also had my wife there to keep an eye on me, because the thing I was really nervous about was the fact that I was also in the film. Now, I'm used to acting in films and being very focused on my character, but the sheer amount of things you have to have in your mind when you're also directing, I was worried my performance would suffer. So I had her there as a kind of BS monitor for me. And she would give me a thumbs up, a sideways, or a just to make sure I was in the zone. So yeah, those things all helped.
The toughest critic is right there.
That's what you want. I'll take that on the set before it's out in the world. I can't do anything about what people say once the film is done. My ego will be okay if I get that criticism on the day.
I want you to have some time to gush about your incredible young lead and just how incredible Lonnie is. So when you were going through the process, what made him the right actor for Gunnar?
Well, it's very, very difficult to find child actors who have a combination of emotional intelligence, but also they haven't been tainted by the business if they have been acting for a while, because they can sort of, if their parents are very heavy-handed and make them very rehearsed, or they have a sense of themselves, so they're undirectable, whatever it is, it's fraught with challenges. But Lonnie is special. I really, really mean that. He is a needle in a haystack. To have a kid who can both be a kid whilst also having the technical proficiency of a professional actor, whilst having both the emotional intelligence of a very bright kid, but the vulnerability of an 11-year-old, of an actual 11-year-old. It's such a tough thing to find. And I found it not only in Lonnie, but also Amaya Miller, who is his friend who goes on this adventure with him. Just a complete gift. Without those two roles working, the film is dead.
David, knowing you were taking on directing, did you get any rehearsal time at all with the other actors?
I built that in. It's very hard to find on an independent film because, you're jamming, you're trying to save money, you have very limited time. But I knew just how prioritous it was in order for this to work. And also because as a first-time director, I didn't want to leave anything to chance in terms of figuring stuff as important as the emotional terrain of the film on the day when I have everything else coming at me. So yeah, we had a week or two of rehearsals while we were in prep, and that was invaluable.
I'm super curious about this now too, as an actor, who's very familiar with the process. Do you give your other actors multiple takes? When do you know that you got it and you're able to move on? Because you've juggled both sides of that now.
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is where Joel Edgerton really came in handy with his advice. He said to me, don't make the mistake of being the one who says action and cut, because you're already muddying things by being an actor and a director. But if you're in a scene with someone and you're saying action, and then you're acting opposite and you're saying cut, it's just too weird. So you have your first AD be the one to do that. The other thing is never finish a scene and then instantaneously start giving the other person direction, because ideally in a scene, you're interacting as you're trying to evoke human experience as much as possible. So you're not observing the person, you are engaging with the person. So his advice was leave the scene, go and look at the monitor. Even if you're pretending to look at the monitor, you're effectively taking one hat off, putting another hat on, and coming back. And that's the way to sort of deal with the church and state of being both an actor and a director, and kind of keeping the clean lines with your other actors. It was so important to do that, to not muddy the waters too much.
I would imagine that's fantastic. One of the elements that really gets conveyed is just the love of storytelling in the way that Gunnar is an avid reader. I'm curious if that's an aspect that you had growing up. Were you an avid book reader, and how did you consume stories growing up?
Yeah, I was an avid consumer of stories. My mom always called me a TV addict. I watched films. I have VHS tapes that have been so worn down that from overwatching, and I had a very, very vivid imagination, which went on to serve me very well as both an actor and a writer, and as a director also. But you're absolutely right. There is built into Emma's script is this love of not only storytelling, but imagination and myth and fairy tale and nursery rhymes and all of those things that fascinate us when we're younger. The fact that reality and fantasy can coexist so closely. You perceive something is so real, but through adult eyes, it's a completely different thing. That's something quite unique to the young eyes. And I love these stories when they don't patronize the young gaze. Where they meet kids where they're at and they don't talk down to them. And there's still something there for the grown-ups as well when they watch the film. So, I have to credit Emma with packing this script with all of those elements.
For sure. But in your direction, I think you went out of your way to maybe maintain a PG rating. There are elements where you could have gone a little bit harder if you wanted to. And I was curious if it was just your intention to make sure that it was material that could be viewed by the whole family.
Well, an ambition of mine is to do something which I call live action Pixar. I love that the entire family can watch Up, The Incredibles, Soul now, which I think is a brilliant film. Fantastic. And these have incredibly deep themes. I mean, the existential thinking that goes into Soul, the fact that in Up, this older man has just lost his wife and befriends this younger boy and they go on this adventure. These are all things that if you put them in a live action film, the chances are those studios wouldn't have made those movies. But that's what Amblin used to do back in the day. And I think there's a real business opportunity being missed by not having those elements in films that the whole family can watch. So for me, it's important not to go so edgy that it precludes younger viewers, but then older people think, oh, well, it's a kids movie, so it's not for me either. It's a really tough needle to thread, but I think it's possible, and no one does it better than Pixar.
Yeah, very true. I'm so glad you brought up animation, because it brings me to my next point, which I wanted to bring up, is when you get to the idea of sharing the myth of the Waterman, you transition into this gorgeous animated sequence. And I would love to know your thought process behind, like, not just doing a live action flashback or a simple narration that would, even though you have the most amazing Alfred Molina, contributing to the sequence. What made you decide to go animated, and how did that come about?
Well, this was an example of necessity being the mother of invention. I mean, as written, it was to be a live action depiction of what happened with the Waterman 100 years ago. Now, that's a very expensive sequence, a dam breaking, it's the early 1900s, late 1800s. And so, the animation came out of the fact that Gunnar was already a kid who was sort of obsessed with graphic novels and doing his own graphic novel. And, in talking to some other directors, one of the things I really got by way of advice was stay in your protagonist's POV. And in doing that, why not have him essentially visualize this story as if he were telling the story, even though Alfred Molina is the one giving him the imagery. And so that's how we ended up with the animation. A great company out of Oregon called Bent did all the animation, and my goodness, it was so much better than I could have even imagined.
Did you see A Monster Calls?
Yes, I love that film.
It reminded me very much of when it went to that sort of watercolor paintings, that they did to convey the mythology of it. I love when fantasy sort of blends into reality that way, and I thought it worked very well in your film. One of the things I think works really well too is your choice of score. Peter Barrett's work there too. It has that sort of symphonic element to it. It keeps the tone somewhat playful. Can you talk a little bit about how you collaborated with him to get the right score for it?
Well, that is a great story in and of itself. This is Peter's very first English-speaking film. I was doing a show I was doing at Les Mis for the BBC in Brussels, and I went to go and do a narration for Spot the Dog, just this children's book. And Peter was the engineer, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I know you make movies. I'm a composer." I was like, "You're the Spot the Dog guy. Don't talk to me about you're a composer." I needed a restaurant recommendation, so I gave him my email. He gave me this restaurant recommendation and then kept on bugging me about the fact that he was a composer. I end up directing the film, and I was just like, let me send him the script. Send him the script. He sent me 8 complete pieces of score done with an orchestra that he put together himself. I cut it into the film as we were editing it, and it just cut like butter. And that's how Peter came to be the composer on this. And he just completely got the tone and feel of what I was after. It was just a magical, happy accident.
In movies like this, the score can make or break it, honestly. Yeah, and so it was amazing that worked out the way. Okay, well, so knowing that you came into it the way that you did, I was curious if this is just an itch that you felt like you had to scratch, or now that you've done it, is this the next phase of your career?
Well, it's going to be a chapter I want to keep on visiting for sure. The thing I really recognize, having now directed a film, is that you better be passionate about the film you're going to be directing, because you are going to spend a lot of time with it. And I'm really blessed to have a lovely career as an actor. That is something I want to keep doing, and I love doing, and I love being able to switch to different kinds of stories. But, when the right film, the right script, the right circumstances come along, I definitely want to direct again. It's just about waiting for the right one to come along.
Well, as a filmmaker podcast, David, we're thrilled to follow your career. I hope to see many more films from you down the pipeline. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much. This was fun, and I love your site as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for David Oyelowo for joining the show. Check out The Waterman in theaters. I'll give you a full review in the This Week in Movies segment of the show. I want to get to talking points to a video that traditionally would drop the day after we recorded. So I'm really glad that we are recording today.
Okay, but here's a real question. Tomorrow's May the 4th, Star Wars Day. You know that they're going to just drop like some massive freaking Star Wars news, and a single tear is going to roll down my cheek.
Will they, though?
I don't know. That's the thing too. Like, I feel like they don't always drop great stuff. It's gonna be like, here's how to make a Baby Yoda drink with cucumbers.
Well, they're making that Bad Batch show comes out tomorrow. That's like their big May the 4th.
And you saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I've only seen the first episode, but I mean, like, I think because it's the first episode is like 70 minutes, and then
it's like a short movie.
Basically, yeah, essentially. Yes. But yeah, we can get into that. But I wonder what they're gonna. Yeah, well, I don't know what they would deliver tomorrow from a Star Wars perspective. I mean, is there anything that we're awaiting from an announcement perspective?
They could do like a first look at either Andor, or they can give you a first shot of Ewan McGregor.
Book of Boba Fett.
Is there a Mando season 3? Are they shooting that?
Not till next year, though, right? Have they even started filming yet?
I don't know. That's a good question. They've been shooting Andor for a ton, so if they release footage of anything, it could be that.
I did hear that every Star Wars fan tomorrow is going to receive a cheese pizza in the mail, and Favreau is going to deliver it.
That's
personally.
Really sweet. Yeah, that's very nice.
I'm really looking forward to it. I asked for extra cheese because I think he's great.
Marvel instead decided on a random Monday to drop some huge information about their Phase 4 slate, including the first look at the Eternals, Chloe Zhao's follow-up to her Best Picture, Best Director winning.
Zhao.
Oh my God.
It's like no. Honestly, it's a name that we want to get right because she's awesome. Zhao. Yeah.
First look at the Eternals. We have title confirmation for Captain Marvel 2, which is now called The Marvels, and Black Panther is now going to be called Wakanda Forever or Black Panther.
Wait, is that what The Marvels was? Captain Marvel 2?
Yeah.
That is Captain Marvel 2.
I honestly thought it was some Incredibles thing they were doing. That's how, like, I honestly did not get that. I watched the whole video. I did not get that was Captain Marvel 2.
Well, I can explain from why the video in a hot minute. What of the reveal, if anything, got you guys most excited? Kev, what moved your needle watching that teaser?
I mean, the movie out of that entire list that I'm excited about is Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange. And nice. While we didn't really get anything in there except for a title card, which we've already seen the logo for, but out of all of I love Ant-Man too. I don't know. So I'm excited about kind of the more not side characters, but not like you have the Caps and the Iron Mans and the Thors, and then you have the Ant-Mans and the Doctor Stranges. Like they're not B level, but they're like B+ level characters in terms of like the whole universe. But I love Doctor Strange and Ant-Man, so I'm like looking forward to seeing what they do with those. Is Peyton Reed doing Ant-Man 3?
He is, yes.
Yeah, so I'm all in on that. I didn't love 2. I love 1, so I'm hoping they kind of bring it back. I like the name of 3. Was it Quantumania?
Quantumania, yes.
That was cool.
Correct.
I like that. I like the name of it. I also rewatched Endgame recently, and I really love how they brought. I love how Paul Rudd, that whole Paul Rudd storyline from 2 into Endgame. I'm very that whole arc of Ant-Man's really cool. But I think at the end of the day, the Shang-Chi footage is probably what kind of blew my mind the most, just from an action perspective.
So I got totally fooled by this trailer because they did Black Widow. They were talking about the movies that are coming this year, and they did Black Widow with a pretty lengthy look, bunch of new scenes. Then they went into Eternals, and it was the first footage from it. And then they went to Shang-Chi and they showed footage of it. And then I was like, oh, fuck, Spider-Man's next. Like, Spider-Man No Way Home. I was like, they're going to show Toby and Andrew and Tom together. Like, just a quick shot of the 3 of them together. And then instead it just became the litany of title cards.
They would never do that in a little promo video. That's too big of a drop.
It wouldn't have been in the middle of the that's like the last shot of something. In the same way that Spider-Man was the last shot of the Civil War trailer.
Yeah.
All of them, you don't squeeze that shot into the middle of something.
Well, you're speaking very rationally right now. I was not rational when I was watching this clip.
If Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are in fact in Spider-Man 3,
yes.
Do we learn it in the movie or the trailer for it?
Trailer.
I think we learned it in the trailer.
Because I think if they were the kind of company that hid things, we wouldn't have known the Hulk was in Ragnarok.
Yeah. But the marketing team is the one who's deciding what's in the trailer, and they're not going to not tell you that we have 3 Spider-Men in this.
Because it's a box office draw.
I wish they held that Hulk reveal. That Hulk reveal
could you imagine having experienced that in but Sean, I don't know about you, but I know, speaking on behalf of my needle, that it was greatly impacted by that big glowing 4.
Oh, I know. Yes.
So, is that an A or a 4?
The 4.
It's a 4.
Is it the Fantastic Four
Yeah,
logo?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Fantastic Four.
I saw a tweet and it kind of made me double think it because it does look like the Avengers a little bit. Kind of, if you look at it. And I thought maybe they were implying it was Fantastic Four, but not giving it to us officially.
No, because when they did the reveal for their slate a little while ago, at the Disney Investors Day, they talked about Fantastic Four and they showed that logo.
Same logo. Okay.
The Avengers logo is the Avengers logo in universe. I wonder to this point though, what if the Fantastic Four in universe become like the new Avengers?
Well, that's interesting because there's no Avengers film like on this slate at all. Like I thought that was one of the things. I wrote a piece today about like 4 things that are missing from this reveal, and I didn't want to be like, oh, this is all cool. You dated everything through 2023, but where's the rest of the stuff? Because Mahershala Ali got introduced as Blade back in 2019 on
Where
stage.
was the Blade footage? Where was the?
Have they even started filming yet?
It's not even dated. They don't even have it on the calendar through 2023.
But also, like, that might not be all
Nothing.
of Phase 4. There might be more to Phase 4 than that.
Maybe, but like they've already pre-announced their release dates, and there are only 2 dates. This is super nerdy. There's only 2 dates left in 2023. That
I know what I
loved.
Yet.
Yes.
Wakanda Forever title.
Yeah, that was
like
great.
that?
I love that too.
Great title for Black Panther 2.
I don't know what they're going to do about that. I have no idea how they're going to address that. Do they kind of get a pass? Do they kind of get a pass because we all know what happened? And however they work it into the story, we'll just
I trust Coogler. That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
Are they going to explain T'Challa being killed, like a story, like or him going away? Like, do you think it'll be more like Paul Walker's character in Fast and Furious, where he just goes away and we don't know what happened to him, or like I don't know how they're
they have
do
that whole afterlife area, ethereal plane in Wakanda that they could use for something.
Oh, good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
because he goes to visit his father when he's in the training, which is actually one of my favorite scenes in the first Black Panther film. You're right. They're probably going to play with. I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, Chadwick's character is going to have to be explained somehow. I mean, like, I don't know. I just don't know how.
Okay,
are they going? Like, they're going to. But they know the audience. They can't recast him.
Why can't you?
I don't think you can.
You can't recast him. I don't think you can.
I think.
Or no.
I think what that character means to people is bigger than Chadwick Boseman, and I think Chadwick Boseman would agree with that.
But Black Panther already is a revolving door character.
Right. Sure.
Like,
Someone just takes him over
before him. So I don't know why they would go the route of not necessarily being disrespectful, but like why even try to cover up Chadwick Boseman within the universe and just revolve that door.
Well, I think like theoretically, Shuri would become like his sister would become the new Black Panther. There will be a Black Panther.
Yeah,
it'd just be somebody different.
Yeah, but I mean, but necessarily you don't have to technically recast it then, because if you think about it from that perspective, what we're explaining, like his father was Black Panther, right, at one point, and then Chadwick became, I mean, in the universe. So a new Black Panther taking over doesn't necessarily mean he's recast. It's just another person.
But then, like we have multiple, and I understand obviously circumstances are different, but we have multiple actors playing Bruce Wayne. We never say, oh, why don't you just give the character of Batman to a different character?
But I think
because there's not multiple actors in the same universe.
Yeah, I think that would be wrong for Marvel to do. I know that kind of happened with the Hulk. Obviously, that's a little different. Being at the sort of
different circumstances.
Yeah, but that's all. That's all but very
that's
early
behind the scenes drama.
I think once you go, once you're 20-something films in, it's like just you're creative. You have a bunch of creative writers. Figure out a way to write around.
And like I said, like I did love the idea that I saw someone wrote that like Black Panther 2 should take place during the blip, which would, if anything, buy them some time, because that could explain why he's not there. It doesn't get you out of explaining.
I don't think that'll happen, though. I think that, for one...
because you got to move the story forward. That's basically moving back.
I don't know that Coogler's signed on for a Black Panther 3. I doubt that's even a thing at this point. But, like, I imagine that creative team and kind of where they were is going to want to handle that. So I see them... I think it's a very sentimental thing for everybody involved, and they're going to want to... And from what I've heard of their quotes, they're really approaching it as trying to respect him and give sort of a great place for that to resolve.
Sure. I don't know if they confirmed this, but did they say or not say if Chadwick is going to be done through CG? Like,
they said I've
heard he will not.
They confirmed he will not.
Yeah. The only reason I was asking is because like we've seen a lot of Marvel playing with CG in terms of like you just de-aging and et cetera. Like, you know, you look at the opening or Civil War, right? Is that the one where they do the younger Downey?
Yeah. Which
so I was
looks
wondering
flawless.
But I'm going to Gabe's point of like if they play around in that world where like the afterlife world, if I'm referring to it correctly, you could theoretically have a CG version of the character there. But I'm actually completely happy with them not doing it. I don't want them to do that.
That would just feel icky to me.
Yeah,
like I said,
I feel uncomfortable even thinking about that scene.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not even, for me personally, I'm not even interested in trying to figure out what the best way to do it, because I don't think I'm going to have a good of idea as Ryan Coogler, so I'm just going to trust Coogler.
I want to talk, I know we jumped right to the speculation and everything that's coming, but I want to talk about the front half of that clip. I like the Marvel events at the movies was super chilling. Like I got real emotion.
And Stan Lee's voiceover.
Yeah. How about prepare a guy for that on a Monday morning?
Because I actually immediately thought of you, Sean. I immediately, like the second he started speaking, I thought to myself, this is going to destroy Sean.
Oh my God.
And then the words he was using, like when he talked about
your brother, he's
Chadwick,
your brother.
Yeah, Chadwick and Michael, he's your brother. And then the sister was for, was it, who were the two actors that he said for sister? Was it
Gamora and the blue girl from Guardians?
Oh, yeah. Nebula?
Karen Gillan.
Nebula?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so, yeah.
Well, that whole montage was like, and then transitioning right into footage that I guarantee Joe Russo shot of the audience reaction to Avengers Endgame.
Yeah. I was wondering what theater that was. Like it didn't look like the one we've seen circulating throughout the web sometimes, where people like, or it's like a gigantic crowd. This looked like more of an intimate screening. It looked like there were like a couple guys' heads.
When I talked to Feige for WandaVision, and asked him if he ever watched those audience reaction videos, and he goes, I'm pretty sure it's Joe Russo who shot some of those videos.
So I guess you get a pass for recording inside of a movie theater if you're the one that directed the movie.
Yes, if it's your
and he's literally filming the scene, like the actual big scene when it was opening night. So,
but the fact that they used it in an official marketing material made me think that it's Russo's, and then they got
it had to be right because
because otherwise you don't get like just and also too. I don't know. I don't want to get into like legal banter, but in terms of like news, we have to get permission to use people's. We can't just rip people's videos off the internet we have to reach out to them and get verbal. So short of them probably paying someone out the ass, it's probably the Russo's video because they could just be like, "Hey, can we use this?"
Kevin Feige gave them a worn hat. He goes, "Here, I wore this on the press tour of Black Widow." I would take that.
Sean would shoot a whole film for them for a worn hat.
I'd give him all the photos of my children growing up. Here,
you would give them your children.
I would give them children temporarily.
Well,
I'd
Sean does call Kevin Feige dad in the text chain, so
daddy. Yes. All right. So Marvel looks like they got a lot of exciting things coming for the next 3 years at the very least, with a lot of other projects that haven't been announced, including Blade, like I mentioned. Deadpool 3 is supposed to be transitioning over to Disney. No mention of that. So these are all things that are coming down the pipeline. Let's switch to Tom Hanks. His second film in a row after Greyhound is not going to theaters and is instead heading to Apple TV Plus. It was a film previously called BIOS, and it's set in the future, and it's about a man and his dog, from what I understand.
Oh, dude! But you know what it's about, though? we talked about this at our
I know we
episode
mentioned
100. The plot is just built to crush me. It is a guy in the future, like post-apocalyptic. It's him and his dog. They're by themselves.
Yeah.
He knows he's dying, like he is about to die. So he's building a robot to take care of his dog after he's gone. That story with Tom Hanks in it, like. I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it. Like that story is going to crush my soul.
Well, now it's called Finch. Not the best title.
Which is a great emo band, by the way.
Unless that's the dog's name, in which case I'm cool.
Well, I'm going to guess it's the robot's name.
Oh, maybe true. That might be true.
But let me ask a question to you guys, because this is 2 films back-to-back for Tom Hanks. Is Tom Hanks not bankable anymore? Like, is he a streaming star now?
I don't think. I think and if you want me to be honest, I think the age of the movie star is over. Right. It has been for years. I genuinely believe there's a couple people you can name that still go. I think Denzel Washington, DiCaprio. I think people go for Sandra Bullock. I don't think people are going to the movies anymore for the actor. And I used to work at a box office when I was 17, so people would walk up I remember, and anytime a Denzel Washington movie would come out, someone would say, I want a ticket to the new Denzel movie. They wouldn't even say the name of the film.
Yeah.
And so, like, I feel like there are some that, like, Cruise isn't opening stuff outside of Mission Impossibles.
Yeah, right. Did they come for Cruise or did they come for the new Mission Impossible?
They're coming for the new mission. And, like, you know, look at, like, Chris Evans, Chris Pratt, when they do side projects that are outside of Marvel, they're
Passengers.
Right, Passengers, and that had Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt. Two of the most bankable stars on the planet. And I think that's the one thing I'm interested from an industry perspective is where we're going, because we all know that the movies that are making money are the box office franchises, the MCU films, the superhero movies, the prequels, the sequels, the movies based on books, popular books, obviously. I don't know. I would love to hear from you guys on this. I genuinely, I don't think there are many bankable. I don't think Tom Hanks is selling tickets on Tom Hanks
but
anymore.
let me sort of flip that.
Unfortunately,
maybe Tom Hanks isn't a big screen theatrical draw. Definitely not as much as he used to be in the 90s. But I think he's potentially a big streaming draw.
Did Greyhound do well?
How many people actually have Apple TV? I think Apple TV is on the lesser end of, you know. But
that's the assumption, is that if something comes out on Apple TV, if you're a fan of that person, you will go out and, like, for example, with HBO Max, for example, I know Apple TV is a little different story because you have to get the actual box where you can watch it through your computer.
It's a little bit hard. It's an extra step.
Well, technically, I don't know what the actual number is, but Apple, since they introduced Apple TV Plus, has still been extending their, like, you buy an iPhone and you get Apple TV Plus. So
for a year.
That's like there's millions of people that have iPhones that potentially don't even know they have Apple TV Plus.
Right.
So it could be a pretty substantial number.
And also, I think the best thing that's happened to them is Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso, for
probably.
Sure.
Which didn't become successful for them until, like, almost 6 months after it came out.
Sure.
Like, in a weird way, like, people didn't start talking about it. But, like, it's so interesting because is Ted Lasso is not doing well because it's Sudeikis. It's doing well because it got word of mouth. Like, people weren't tuning in and going, oh, I want to watch the new Jason Sudeikis show. Right. You know, I love that guy from Horrible Bosses. You know, they're watching it. I'm not saying Sudeikis doesn't have fans, but I don't think the star is what's. I don't know. It's an interesting thing we're seeing.
Take a look at the landscape right now. I mean, Eddie Murphy is a massive star, and Coming to America went to Amazon Prime.
And did very well.
Kate Winslet, you know, theoretically is of our generation a massive star, and she's leading an HBO Max television show right now. You know, if Cruise branches off and does American Made, nobody goes to see it. You know,
but then you have
but on the flip side, if American Made opens on Netflix, becomes a Friday movie, and then it's the first movie that pops up on Netflix when people are on a Friday night trying to look, they're gonna say exactly what they used to say to you, Kevin, which is, "Oh, look, new Tom Cruise movie," and they're gonna press play.
Right.
I think a lot of these movie stars, if they go over to streaming, people will immediately like, dude, let's be honest. When Extraction, no one was like, oh, I want to see the movie because of this plot or the Russos wrote it. They said, oh, look, it's the new Hemsworth movie and it's on Netflix. I think the age of the movie star, in a weird way, hasn't necessarily died as much as it's just gone over to streaming. It matters less on the big screen and matters more on streaming.
But do you also think there's too much content? Like, I think to a point where we're oversaturated, to a point where there's a new movie star every day. Like, Bridgerton, for example, had no names, became one of the biggest shows on the planet. Regé-Jean Page became one of the biggest stars on the planet for that time period, hosted SNL. Yeah. And he was famous, very famous and bankable from that show. And I just wonder, because there's so much content coming out every single week. There's a new person to like every single week. I mean, The Queen's Gambit, how the hell did that do well? I mean, it's a great show. Great show, but how did it get people to watch?
Because it was a word of mouth. Because people start talking about it. Like, the average person,
no one knows who Anya Taylor-Joy is.
Doesn't matter. They do from that. Yeah. But like every star had to have something that people started talking about. And for her, I mean, she's been around for a while.
I love The Queen's Gambit. I love Anya Taylor-Joy. I'm just saying that. Think about that for a second from a bankable perspective. All right, we have a brand new show coming to Netflix about chess starring Anya Taylor-Joy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what people heard. All people heard was, it's awesome and you need to watch it. Like, no one pressed play on a show about soccer and a guy going across, like, over the pond. They pressed play on a show that their best friend at work told them was awesome.
No, I think you're onto something about the streaming aspect of it. It's just,
I think I think one aspect of it, though, is the theatrical release sort of machine is more about marketing the franchise these days. Whereas I think in particular Netflix is much better at sort of memifying their characters and by virtue the actor themselves, where John Page has memes all over the place. He has reactions all over the place. They're really good
Thanks to our site.
Yeah, well, they're really good about creating
media.
them. They're really that's one thing that Quibi was bad at is you couldn't like record your screen on your phone. So people were like, this is never going to work because the only way people know how to find this is they can record clips and send it to people, or they can make their own sort of internet content out of your content and share it with people. So I think that whether it's just like an old school versus a new school, or it's just the way that they've decided to approach things, I think they're just much better at marketing the actual characters and actors within their projects versus the big screen methodology, which is like, check out our franchise. This is going to be the new Mortal Kombat for the next 5 years or whatever.
It's also I think there's nothing more timely than the fact that within the next 24 hours, all of us are about to interview Angelina Jolie. People are going to, they're not going to call that movie by its title, Those Who Wish Me Dead. When they tell someone about it at work, they're going to say, oh, did you see the new Angelina Jolie movie?
I agree, but are people going to go to the theater to see the new Angelina Jolie movie? No, but I think they'll press
play on HBO Max.
Yes, I agree. But like,
which is why I think the Age of the Movie Star exists in streaming.
Yeah, I just wonder, like, you know, the bankable element of these stars now.
But she's also never been super bankable.
Yeah, I want to ask one quick question.
It's interesting.
Like, right now, theoretically, The Rock is one of the highest drawing actors right now, right? But you could argue that it's largely because of either the Fast franchise or largely the Fast franchise or Hobbs and Shaw. If one of his one-off kind of, 90s
skyscraper
type action movies came out, that's a good example. I guess he is still kind of doing
actually did pretty well.
Did it? Because, I mean, like, he's got Jumanji and the Fast and Furious franchise.
The Tooth Fairy. He's got the Tooth Fairy.
But if he put one of those out right now, like, let's say he released the Tooth Fairy. Not a movie like the Tooth Fairy, but the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah. But it's the sequel, so it's TWOOTH. The Tooth Fairy.
God, why did you give that out for free? That's gold. Do you think it would do okay?
No.
Wow.
I think it would do well if it on Netflix. I think it would do well.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, doing well nowadays is like, how well is it doing on Netflix? Yeah. But like, I don't know. You look at something like 6 Underground with Ryan Reynolds, where that movie came and went, but cost over, reportedly, I read online, somewhere around $200 million. Like,
that's even Michael Bay. Like, Michael Bay's a name.
I don't know if, like, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, don't forget, The Rock has a movie coming to Netflix this year.
Red Notice.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Gal Gadot and Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Is Gal Gadot bankable, or is she bankable as Wonder Woman?
She's bankable as Wonder Woman. And that's it.
It's so interesting to think about that. Like, if Gal Gadot
it's the franchise. It's the
franchise.
Yeah.
And we love these actors, and they're so great in their roles, but that whole Age of the Movie Star thing is like, I feel like we've been seeing it slip away for a while. I really do. Like, look at one of the best examples, and I know we'll move on. Look at Harry Potter, right? Look how famous Daniel Radcliffe was. And then look at every movie he did after Harry Potter. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying he chose blockbusters to do. He did like fun little, like, quirky, like Swiss Army Man, which was great. But Robert Pattinson had a hard time too when he came off Twilight. Good Time wasn't a blockbuster, and or was it Remember Me was another movie.
They also made choices that these franchises afforded them. Like, because
I think Radcliffe was, at least I remember at the time, the narrative was he was very strategic about, like, I don't want to go into any project and have people go, oh, it's Harry Potter. Like, he was very much, didn't work for a while. Yeah. Then he was doing, I'm going to play a corpse that farts.
You know who's bizarrely the opposite is Eddie Redmayne. Eddie Redmayne gets prestigious pictures and Oscar nominations for things like Danish Girl.
And then does franchises?
Chicago 7. And then he does Fantastic Beasts. And everyone's like, dude, go back and do some kind of
isn't that
period picture.
That's so strange.
Yeah, but like on paper, that to me, that make like he wins an Oscar and gets offered like, hey, we're going to give you a 5-picture Harry Potter. Like,
yeah.
That, I mean, to me, it's not out of the, like, it's not understandable why he took that.
Does that franchise limp to 5 films? Does it limp to 5 films?
I don't think so.
No.
I really don't. Like,
is Michael B. Jordan?
3 hasn't even come out yet. No one cares.
I know, yeah.
Is Michael B. Jordan bankable?
No.
I don't think so. No. All right, let's get to talking about things that do well because of word of mouth. We want to talk about Invincible. And also ReelBlend. But mainly Invincible, which is an animated series from Robert Kirkman that is on Amazon Prime. And this is one of those ones that came out once a week. And even going into it, and Gabe, I'm going to loop you in on this conversation because Gabe was all in on this title. He had you read the comics? Are you all the way through on the comics? Or?
I think I'm like halfway through when I last read them. Halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way through the run.
So Gabe was begging us, like, watch this show. It's one of the best stories that you'll ever see. And so I gave it a shot. And so this is a superhero origin story. It's a lot more in depth than that because essentially it's the son of the most powerful man on the planet. His name is Omega Man. He's voiced by J.K. Simmons. He looks like J.K. Simmons, which is oddly off-putting. And the kid comes into his own power. It's almost like going through puberty. You never know what your power is going to be. You end up getting your power. Omega Man heads up a Justice League type superhero group, and it tells this parallel story about what Omega Man has been up to and what Invincible is up to as he grows into his powers. And each episode is kind of like a little standalone, like a new villain gets introduced. It's a whole new challenge to overcome. In every single episode, Invincible Man gets his ass handed to him. Like, he is a bloody heap at the end of this. It is one of the most violent shows that I've seen. It's probably like The Boys, which I haven't watched. I'm not caught up on at all, but in an animated fashion. And it's one of these shows where it's totally surprising every single episode. There's a demonic villain, a demonic detective who is investigating a crime that happens in the first episode. I don't want to tell you anything about it. There's family drama at home with Omega Man's wife, who's a human.
Omni-Man, by the way. Sorry, Omni-Man.
Oh, what do I call him? Omega Man? Omni-Man.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, thank you. Did I get it right at least once or twice?
I couldn't tell. You were saying it really fast, and I went, did he say?
Did he say Omega Man?
Yeah.
Omni-Man. But eventually you just get hooked into the story of Invincible. And the finale literally was one of the, like, a jaw-dropping experience. Like, there were things that happened in the finale that I could not believe that they were putting into a television show.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad I finished it, but I kind of asked Gabe, because the exciting news is that seasons 2 and 3 got announced. And I kind of asked Gabe, because it gets to a point of some closure, and I was like, is there more story to tell? And Gabe's like, yeah, you're just now opening up the world. Like, it's going to get a lot bigger. So Gabe, tell me what you thought about how they converted the first season, and, like, should I be super excited about where it's going to potentially go?
I thought it was great, and yes, you should be excited, because as I said, it's barely scratched the surface that the kind of Invincible world does open up to. If you've never read the book, haven't heard of the show, and you're thinking about getting into it, one of the great things about it, one thing that's so clever about the story, that was clever about it when it was a book first coming out in like the early aughts, I think when it started coming out, is it doesn't just like subvert superhero stories the way that kind of The Boys might, and I don't put that down, but it does in the sense that it uses everything we understand about superheroes and superhero tropes and even specific superhero characters to sort of start the story, to sort of start your expectations and then go from there. So it kind of gets a head start in every sense that it gets, because you go, oh, this guy's kind of like Superman. And so it's like, oh, you understand that, and it can subvert that and it can build off of that. And they do it in really clever ways to where you don't really have to like run up to it completely. Or like the demonic detective is very much Hellboy. And it's like, you know who Hellboy is. You know that Hellboy is this, that, and the other. And it doesn't like say anything. He just kind of looks like Hellboy. And and it's a fun, if you're a superhero fan, you can have fun playing off of it. But
I always
also
like that. I always like
really
that
great.
little, like, it trusts the audience to like with The Boys, like you're saying, like you trust that guy's probably Captain America. It's interesting.
It's incredibly clever, and I think it does it so many favors in being able to just go beyond the usual superhero stuff. The only criticism I think I have of the first season, and from what I heard, is there was kind of an A team and a B team that were doing animation.
Oh, interesting.
And I suspect it was all budgetary, with the first season of something and not knowing if it's going to work. You don't really get everything that you might wish for. So there are some moments, the smaller moments are clearly kind of like animated in a different way and not to the quality of the big fight scenes. But when you get to the big fight scenes, it's top class anime style animation and it looks great. So I hope moving forward, especially since they greenlit 2 seasons, they'll give the sort of A-team quality all around. That's kind of the only thing, because if you read the books and you haven't watched the show for some reason, it's still surprising in that it moves some of the order of things around and it changes some of the details, so it's still surprising. But overall, I'm impressed. And I hope you guys will watch it if you haven't.
Let me ask you guys, because I actually, I'm saying this knowing that I am about to make a ton of enemies with people who listen to our show. I have a really tough time with anime. Just that particular style of animation. I just feel like oftentimes it doesn't move a ton. It's just, I kind of feel like I'm looking at a still image that has like just very little movement. It's like
that's the
not
B
very
team
fluid
quality that I was talking about. Yeah.
But I have tried to watch and given damn good shots at what are considered to be some of the greatest anime series of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I got about 15, 20 episodes into Avatar. Couldn't do it. I gave it Attack on Titan a shot. Couldn't do it. I mean, this is like top tier stuff. And so I think I've just had to accept the fact that I just can't get into. Now, so do you think that I'll be able to get into this show knowing that I have such an issue getting over that particular style of animation?
Well, it doesn't really do anything new, no. Like it doesn't break the ground. It's not groundbreaking as far as the animation. I would say give it a shot because I think it's really great. But I love this story so much and believe in this story so much that if you watch the first couple episodes and you just can't do it, I would implore you to read the comics because I think you will really enjoy how clever the story is.
Did you finish episode 1?
Me?
Of Invincible?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I haven't even watched it yet.
Oh, I thought you said you tried it.
No, I've tried. Like my thought process is because I've tried sort of what is considered to be the A class of so many anime series. And couldn't get into it, that my first thought was like, well, if this is anime, it doesn't matter if it's about superheroes or not. I'm just not going to be able to get into it.
I would say try to stick through it for the story because this definitely has moments where it's like, they clearly didn't put the time and the money into these scenes that are smaller and kind of people talking. And it looks like they're standing still and just kind of blinking. So I would say it's probably definitely going to bother you at some points. But Sean, go ahead.
I'm just going to say watch episode 1.
Yeah.
If you get through episode 1 and you don't want to keep going, then bail.
Okay.
But if you get to the end of episode 1 and it hooks you, then you'll power through the rest. And the good news is, like, the whole season is now available. You don't have to worry about the cliffhangers and waiting a whole week for it to come out.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. Okay.
It's only 8 episodes,
I dig it.
So give it a shot. Speaking of animation that seems to work, I haven't seen it yet, but the boys both have. Last week on Netflix, The Mitchells versus the Machines dropped, and you guys have both caught up on it now. Hopefully some other people have watched it since we got to it. Tell us why this film is largely has a really good chance of making your top 10 film at the end of the year, Kevin McCarthy.
I mean, it just put a massive smile on my face. It's also a film that is made... It's a film that dually works for people who are gigantic film fans, and if you're not a major film fan, the film still works. It's kind of like how Pixar makes a movie that works for adults and for kids. I feel like this movie works for super nerd film fans and people who are just casual moviegoers. So, like, as a film fan, you get all these references to all these classic films, and like, you know, the leading character is a major film fan. She's going off to college to go to film school. She has her 4 favorite directors, or like she has a Mount Rushmore, like Greta Gerwig and Hal Ashby's on there. I mean, it's a really cool sense of like building in how much film means to somebody.
She would listen to ReelBlend, essentially. She's a ReelBlend audience.
They would probably yell at us a lot.
They reached out to license our logo, and I said no. I was like, can we make her have it? And I was like, nah, sorry, just can't be.
Right.
But Mike Rianda is the director of this film, and Lord and Miller. I remember seeing Cloudy the Chance of Meatballs for the first time and being blown away by that movie, just from an animation perspective, but also a storytelling perspective. And that's kind of how I fell in love with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, just as storytellers. And obviously, I love 21 Jump Street. But kind of going back to this film, which they produced and worked on as well, it just has so much energy to it. Speaking of animation, they mess with tons of cool stuff. Like, I think they took some of the stuff they learned from Spider-Verse, which had some really interesting animation styles. This movie has like 2D stuff, hand-drawn. There's 3D animation. It's just, it's a gorgeous film. Yeah. I also love the father-daughter relationship in the movie. There's a whole storyline about a father and daughter reconnecting, and it's beautiful. The whole family's amazing. Like, Maya Rudolph's great as the mother. It's just a movie that made me smile. I don't know why. It just made me happy. It was fun. It was weird. It is a weird movie. It's out there. It's like, I saw someone use the term bananas for it. It's probably a great word for it. It is all over the place. you never know what's going to happen. I mean, story points, I'm sure you can figure out along the way that, but at the end of the day, there are so many jokes that are flying throughout that film that I need to see it again, but it's just a really energetic film. It just moves and it just keeps your attention. Yeah.
I have a trigger question. Obviously PJ's going away to college. I watched the first 15 minutes of this. I kind of realized that it was something that my whole family was going to enjoy, so I stopped watching it. But a driving theme of that opening bit is that the daughter's going away to college. Yeah. And the family decides to drive her instead so they can have a bonding time. Like, can I watch this or should I not watch this?
No, it's a beautiful story, in my opinion, about a father and daughter who lost connection essentially throughout the years as she was going through what she was going through and he was going through. But, and just the idea of the trip bringing them together, and I think that, I don't know every detail of your and PJ's relationship, but I feel like there's something beautiful about that moment about the parent letting the child go to school and then and just kind of having that bond. But in this particular story, it's they're fighting a robot apocalypse and they're on the way, and that kind of teaches them about themselves. And
as you do. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of what's beautiful about the movie, right? Is like all that animation and robot apocalypse and weird stuff. The dog is hilarious. All that weird stuff at the end of the day is all grounded in an emotional reality. And I think that's the key to great storytelling, is when you can take the absurd and the insane and justify it for an audience that they believe it, where I'm watching it for the father-daughter story, even though I'm loving the action. I think you as a dad, there's no way you walk away from that movie feeling sad. I think it would actually give you hope that, for your son, kind of like his journey and what he's going to find in school and kind of like how that's pushing his passion forward. But in this movie, particularly, the father doesn't understand the daughter's love of film. Yeah. He thinks that the filmmaking is not going to make her any money. It's a classic story. Like, the parent not believing that, because I always found that to be an interesting thing.
It's how my parents think of podcasting.
but it genuinely is an interesting thing that you see in a lot of families, and you hear about this from actors, like my parents not believing that I can make a living off this. And I feel like what's sad about that particular element of conversation is the parents aren't saying the kid isn't talented. They're just worried about the 1 in a million shot they have to get into the business. You know what I mean? Like, and it's a really, like, I remember hearing a story about Emma Stone, and her mom took her from like Arizona to LA to audition. And that's kind of like, and that was part of the deal, and kind of how she got into Hollywood was her mom kind of helped her along the way. But then you have parents who, genuinely believe that it's really going to be impossible to get into that field and make money off of it. And so, like, you actually understand the father's perspective, but you also understand that the daughter is super passionate and he needs to let her grow and be who she is. So I think there's a lot, I don't know, I'm reading probably a lot deeper into this movie than I intended to, but it had a lot to say about phones and family and living in the present and putting your phone away at dinner with your family. I mean, I don't have kids, obviously, but I genuinely believe that a lot of parents are looking at this movie going, oh yeah, we're just like that. We're just like the Mitchells. And you could replace the Mitchells with any family and just kind of have them go along that journey. And Maya Rudolph, Jake, I mean, her arc at the end was awesome. I thought anyways, it's very good. I love the movie.
Jakey?
Yeah, I mean, like Kevin summed it up well, but also I would add that obviously completely different films, but everything you loved about Into the Spider-Verse is present here. The style of humor, the style of animation, sort of that rapid fire. It's just there are just so many jokes there, and they come at you, and they all land for the most part. It's not like they throw a lot at you, and only every one every few. Like, they all land so much so that you kind of need to give it another pass to catch up on all the jokes that you missed. Yeah. But yeah, I'm at the point now where I'm slowly starting to feel like, when I hear that Sony Pictures Animation has a new movie coming out, like, my ears are going to start perking up like it normally does with Pixar.
I want to shout out to Mark Mothersbaugh, by the way, who did the score. I want to shout out, because did you notice how electronic the score was, Jake? It was really cool. Anyways, go ahead, Sean.
I want to remind you that there's 4 Hotel Transylvania movies from Sony Pictures Animation, so let's...
There's also, how many Cars movies are there?
I like the first 3? Hotel Transylvania.
3. I'm just saying, they all cash in sometimes. There's a Finding Dory. There's a Monsters University. Get off your high horse, O'Connell.
Both good movies.
Are they though?
Yeah, they are.
Are they though?
I saw the Hotel Transylvania where they go on a cruise, and it was actually really great. It was better than Hubie. I'll tell you that.
Hey,
listen.
Hey,
now
It was a lot better than Hubie.
nothing's better than Hubie.
Oh no!
I'm going to use that quote against you for the rest of your life.
It really is.
Nothing is better than Hubie. Kevin
We got
McCarthy.
a lot of
What
this week in
if we had
movies.
Nolan on the show and Nolan's like, that's my favorite movie of 2020?
He can produce this show moving forward.
This week in movies, Billy Crystal has a movie coming out with blanking on
Tiffany
it.
Haddish.
Thank you. Called Here Today. Jakey, tell us about Here Today. Worth seeing?
It's tough because I think I love Billy Crystal, and I think he's really sweet in this part. Kind of a sort of a comedy writing legend that is slowly just at a point where he's kind of he's aging, and he's is it dementia? It's not dementia, Kevin. What would you?
He's having memory loss.
Memory loss. Yes.
and he's having to he's dealing with things where he's forgetting who people
He has to
are.
like put pictures of his family and their names, like.
Dude, I don't know if they ever say specifically.
Yeah, they never officially give it a title. But basically, it's this idea of like he has kind of one last great idea, and he really wants to get it out before he loses the ability to. He ends up, through weird, crazy circumstances, becoming friends with Tiffany Haddish. And here's the deal. I like Tiffany Haddish, and I think she can be very funny, and I have found her to be very funny in several projects. I think she's incredibly miscast here. I did not find her to be funny when she needed to be funny. It felt like, you ever have that moment where you can see someone acting? Like you can feel them reading, like you can feel the fact that they've memorized the words and they're just saying them in chronological order. And that's kind of how I felt. Like it felt like she didn't know how to kind of not be the Tiffany Haddish sort of part in this film. Okay. It didn't feel like she didn't know how to scale it back. And all of her scenes with Billy Crystal, like he just is so natural and it makes it look so easy because he's an icon, he's a legend. And I felt like she was having a really tough time. I felt like she was having a tough time act. And we have all recently seen, we can't say it, but we've all recently seen another comedian in another film play a role that he was having a tough time playing because he wasn't able to basically play himself. Therefore, it seemed forced.
Yeah, right? It just clicked. Yeah,
so that's kind of that. It's a very similar boat.
That took me longer to figure out than I thought.
I know we're in a crunch for time. I like this movie a lot. I actually liked Tiffany Haddish in the movie. I liked Billy Crystal. I thought it had some really sweet moments. I thought they were great together. I thought they had great chemistry. I enjoyed this film. Jake's not like wrong in the sense that is it a great film from a great performance perspective? No, but I really enjoyed it. I put a smile on my face. I like the behind the scenes comedy writing element, and I think Billy Crystal was great in it. I actually like Tiffany Haddish a lot in the movie. So
okay. Andrew Garfield has a movie coming out limited called Mainstream. It's directed by one of the Coppolas. I forget which one.
Is that an oxymoron? An oxymoron, limited. It's called Mainstream.
Limited, called Mainstream. There's another martial arts comedy called The Paper Tigers that is also coming into limited release. Netflix has a movie called Monster. Kev, tell us about Monster.
Yeah, Jake and I watched this movie too. This is a really powerful film. Kelvin Harrison Jr., who you loved Waves, right, Sean? He was great in Waves.
And Loose, if you've never seen Loose.
Yeah, great actor. This is a movie that Kelvin Harrison Jr. told me they shot this in 2016. It premiered in Sundance in 2018, and now it's coming out in 2021. Wow. He looks insanely young in the film. It was kind of jarring when he popped up on my screen for the Zoom. I'm like, wait, that was like 5 years ago. No, but the movie's really, really well done. Jeffrey Wright, I believe, produced it as well, and it has Jeffrey Wright and Jennifer Hudson. It's a very powerful story. Kelvin Harrison's character is essentially on trial for a murder that was committed, but he's Jake, if you back me up here, he's more on trial for being a part of the plan rather than the actual murder itself, because that happened in the store. I guess
there is a law in New York that basically says that if you had any kind of part, basically he's being accused of being kind of the lookout in a way. Like he went into the store to see if there were any cops in there, and as a result is connected to a crime which resulted in a murder. And I guess through New York law, you're a part of the murder rap if that results in the murder. And so but it raises this, what I found, and Kevin, I don't know if you felt this way, the whole time I'm watching the movie, you're kind of left to wonder, like, wait, did he have a part in this? Like, you don't really find out what happened until the end of the movie.
Yeah, they leave you. I would say that they steer you along the way to make you believe that, like, they try to make you. They play with your question. They actually, the movie's very smart. It actually makes you question the situation because of the circumstances of it. But I think at the end of the day, you realize how good of a kid he is, and you see him. And what's cool about the movie, kind of like same thing with Mitchell's versus the Machine, is this is all about filmmaking. His character is a film student, and Tim Blake Nelson is his teacher.
Yeah, which they use, cool. Which is so. I mean, it also shows like how crazy like lawyers can turn everything, because they use that against him when trying to prosecute him, because they basically say he's a storyteller. He's a guy who is an expert at telling lies, and you're screaming. I don't know about you, but I'm screaming at the screen, at just sort of the legal system. They're like, this kid's in film school, and you're using that against him? Like, I got
his parents are played by Hudson.
Absolutely
Hudson
worth checking out.
Worth checking out. And then last thing I'll say about it is they do a really good job making the film feel claustrophobic. While he's behind bars, a lot of the film, or behind glass or behind plastic talking to his parents, they shoot it in a way where, like, you know how like a camera angle, like if someone's on the other side of a jail cell bar, you could shoot them clean on the other side without the bars in front of the camera, or you could shoot them through the bars. Mm-hmm. And so when he would have conversations with his lawyer or his mom or whatever, they would shoot through the bars, and the bars would obstruct the view of the shot. And I'm not saying that's like a monumental, game-changing filmmaking tool, but it put you in his headspace. It put you in the claustrophobic nature of a young 17-year-old kid who's in prison, who's a good kid, who just happens to be on trial for something bad, and it's really powerful. I thought it was really well done.
Okay. Guy Ritchie has a film coming out called Wrath of Man, starring Jason Statham. Jake, take it away. Guy Ritchie films.
You used a description that I thought was perfect a couple of years ago, where you described The Departed as it felt like someone was trying to make a Martin Scorsese movie. Yes. And I always loved that. I always thought that was such an interesting way to describe it. And even as someone who loves it, I love The Departed. But I always thought, that's an interesting way to say that. And that's kind of how I feel about Wrath of Man. It feels like someone trying to make a Guy Ritchie movie who's not quite as talented as Guy Ritchie is.
But it's Guy Ritchie.
I know. Now, that being said, there are flashes of Guy Ritchie where I kind of go, there he is. I see him. It is also a remake of a French film. So it's not entirely like, all like encompassing Guy Ritchie original content. There are flashes where I go like, there he is. There's my guy. There is Guy Ritchie. But there are also moments where I go like, dude, you are better than this. And a big part of that is the script. The dialogue is so like shockingly bad that it just takes you to the point where you just go like, it's so jarring that it takes you out of it, because there's no way the actors can sell it well. So it just takes you out of the scene. It's a much better movie to put on mute. I'll say that.
Jason Statham didn't sell bad dialogue? I find that hard to believe. All right, let's get to the last film coming out. A lot of movies coming out in theaters. This one's called The Waterman.
And normally we haven't seen any of them, but unfortunately so this week we've actually seen all of them.
I saw Wrath of Man and I kind of liked it. It's the second half better than the first half, though.
Okay. The Waterman is directed by David Oyelowo. It is a really compelling story about a young boy who wants to come up with a cure for his mother. They moved to a new location. His mother is dying slowly of cancer, played by Rosario Dawson. David Oyelowo is the father, and this boy, whose name I'm blanking on, but he plays young Randall on the TV show This Is Us. And he wants to believe in some type of a miracle that will help his mom. And he hears about a myth of a creature in the woods on the outside of their town called the Waterman. And if he can find the Waterman, he will be able to come up with some type of a cure. And it's all just the hope and optimism of a little kid. And then it's him and this other girl who claims that she has seen the Waterman before. They go off on an adventure to find the Waterman. And it's about all the things that happened to him in the woods. And then when the parents find out that he's missing, how nervous they are. And, he described it in the interviews, or at least he said that everyone's telling him that it's Spielbergian. And it absolutely is, just in the way that it's shot, in the way that it's focused on kids, in the way that it has a sort of whimsical menace to it. You never feel that those kids are incredibly safe, but you sort of go along with them on the faith that this kid has. Rosario Dawson is unbelievably good as the sick mother. There's this one scene that's horrifying where the boy is really concerned because she's vomiting in the bathroom. So he goes to open the bathroom door to see if he can help her. Like, he's super compassionate, is always trying to help his mom. And she always wears a head wrap, but her head wrap was off, and Rosario Dawson either has a extremely effective bald cap or shaved her head for it. And I was stunned. Like, it's one of those images that just caught you off guard. And then she's so upset because she let their son see him. And they spend a lot of time. David Oyelowo does a really good job of spending a lot of time with the family. So you get really attached to all the different characters. So you bond with their emotions, and then you kind of want the kid to succeed. So, it's really charming from that perspective. As you heard in the interview, Oyelowo was not even planning to direct this, had to step in when they lost their director. So the fact that it is as good as it is even more compelling. So I would absolutely recommend it. Yeah, it's really, really good. I would check out the Waterman. Just know what you're getting into. It's PG. He wanted to make sure it was totally accessible for families. He's the father of 4. He just loves telling stories to his kids. This is very much a movie that's aimed at kids. So it's not going to be like really edgy or or gripping in that way, but if you're a family looking for something to go see, The Waterman is absolutely something that I would recommend checking out. So with that in mind, that's shifting us to our blend game, which is David Oyelowo blend, and I'll go first and mention that it's Selma. Did anybody not pick Selma?
I went Selma as well, only because it's just the most commanding performance of his career.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, looking at his body of work, which is impressive, there's no way that you can't pick this. It's
impossible not to.
I kind of thought Kevin was going to pick Interstellar.
I mean, Interstellar's not fair because it's one. I mean, he's great. I love him in Interstellar.
Yeah, but it's a fine performance, but it's not.
It's a quick scene. Yeah. I mean, you can't. I think I would look stupid by picking.
You'd be picking the film, not the performance, which is not the spirit of this game. Yeah,
and there's so many. I can't imagine the pressure that comes with stepping into the role of Martin Luther King in that story. In that particular story, and I remain gobsmacked of how good he was.
And didn't get an Oscar nomination.
That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
You know how good he is that when Gabe tweeted out earlier today, our tweet basically sort of announcing what our blend game was, he used a GIF from the movie. And I had to pause for a second and go, wait, did he accidentally use an actual GIF of Martin Luther King, or is that actually from Selma? It took me a moment to pause and go wait, is that from the movie or is that an actual GIF? I couldn't differentiate between the two.
I'm going to throw this out too. I don't know if Ava DuVernay has lived up to the bar that she set with Selma yet.
I don't know.
A Wrinkle in Time wasn't great.
Well, no, what's the series that she did for Netflix that was incredible?
Oh, yeah. The 13?
No, 13. What's the other one?
They How They See Us?
Oh, When They See Us.
When They See Us. Oh, my God, that was... Oh, my God,
but she also did the 13th as well, right?
Yes, she did that.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are documentaries, though, right?
No,
When They See Us is a narrative show.
Is it really?
Yeah, and it's amazing.
Won a bunch of awards too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like Selma was probably at the moment her movie peak, but she's had some great material.
And she just recently lost something big, right? Like a Marvel
New
movie,
Gods.
Right? Yeah.
She was going to do New Gods for DC, and there was a little bit tied to Darkseid, which showed up in the Snyder Cut, and Warner Brothers stepped away from it because they thought it would be a little bit too close to what Zack did with Darkseid in his Snyder Cut film.
I heard it's because she didn't want. I heard it's because she didn't want Pitbull to do the soundtrack.
Oh, that's a shame. I mean, it's
what
just a bad
Wrinkle in
decision.
Time? What happened with that movie?
It wasn't good.
Yeah, but what happened with it? Like that cast. Wasn't Oyelowo in Wrinkle in Time? Yeah, he was in Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, probably was. Yeah, they seem.
I'm pretty sure he was. Yeah.
Was he? Was he the father of the girl?
Let me check. I'm almost certain David Oyelowo was in Wrinkle in Time. I'll continue your thoughts, but
I remember Oprah and Reese Witherspoon, and then there's one other actress who I don't even remember who. Oh, Mindy Kaling. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Oyelowo's in it. He plays the It. Is his character. He's a voice, so... Yeah.
I would use his voice. His voice is spectacular.
Good voice.
So I'm not surprised that we all picked Selma. Selma was also chosen from audience picks from Damien McDonnell, John Palmer, Michael Breen, and many, many others. Danny Gertch says The Middle of Nowhere, which was also directed by Ava DuVernay. And Megs says Don't Let Me Go. but is definitely amazing in Selma. So
I went through his filmography, and I saw that he was in A Most Violent Year, and I really remember liking A Most Violent Year, but I do not remember him in that movie. So
that movie's fantastic.
Yeah, but do you remember him in that movie?
I remember Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain.
Sure, I don't remember him in that.
I want to say that he was like an FBI investigator who was getting close to Oscar Isaac.
I think he's a bit of a chameleon like that, though.
Yes.
Yeah, he is. He disappears in his parts for sure. I mean, I know we moved on from Selma. I just wanted to say, like, that performance, he is the movie. I mean, he commands that entire film. It's brilliant.
One of our listeners wrote in and mentioned that he voiced, because you're speaking of his voice acting, he voiced James Bond for one of the audiobooks. Which sounds awesome.
That's pretty amazing.
He's got the voice for it.
He does have a good voice. It's kind of a soothing. I always enjoy speaking with him. He has a great voice.
Wait till you hear our interview. It's really charming.
Looking forward to it. The story you told us about him not directing that film initially was insane.
So. Next week, and this is hinging off of what we're going to transition to do right after this. We're playing Angelina Jolie Blend. So,
because we're all about to interview her.
Bring your favorite Angelina Jolie films to the game.
Big one to have never done before.
I have mine immediately.
Do you?
Really? Changeling?
Yep. I will say it's one word.
Salt?
I'm not saying anything else. One word. It's not salt. It's one word.
Gia?
It's Mr. and Mrs. Smith, no spaces.
No periods or anything. No.
Interesting. All right. So, and that extends to her directorial career. If there's something that she directed but did not star in, that is also open for Angelina Jolie Blend. So email us.
I know what Kevin's is.
ReelBlend@cinemablend.com. You can also use the hashtag on social media.
I was going to cover my mouth and like whisper.
Hashtag Angelina Blend. A reminder to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or email it to us and we'll read it here on the show. Most importantly, do let your friends know about the show. We're trying to grow the audience for the ReelBlend family, essentially, and we look forward to growing episode after episode. You can, again, share us on YouTube if you want to, and help drive up the subscribers on the YouTube channel. And then, of course, we have the next episode of the premium episode, which is a refreshed review. I will be talking about Gladiator, and the guys might be surprised at where I ended up. So again, you can get access to the premium episodes by going to bit.ly/ReelBlend Premium. We'll be back with a brand new episode next week. In the meantime, follow us at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell. The show is at ReelBlend, and producer Gabe is at Gabe Kovac, at Gabe Kovac. And until then, next week, we will continue to try to get Steven Spielberg on the show by saying Minority Report.
We'll see you next week, Hubie.
No.